For the Grim Reaper, everyone thinks it's mysterious and scary. Meeting him means you're about to die. But in reality, the appearance of the Grim Reaper may not necessarily take away your life. Perhaps he's just assessing whether or not you should die. At a funeral, a man in black walks slowly into the church with a dog. A grieving little girl curiously glances at him and asks, "Are you the Grim Reaper?" The man is a bit startled but nods. His name is Takeshi, indeed a Grim Reaper. He's responsible for unexpectedly taking the lives of mortals when their time is up. However, Takeshi is different from other Grim Reapers. He observes the deceased for 7 days before taking their soul. The little girl, after hearing his admission, asks again, "The person at the funeral is only 10 years old. Why do you have to take her?" Takeshi falls silent for a moment and then says it's fate, regardless of right or wrong. He is willing but powerless. The little girl seems to understand his words to some extent and hands him a flower, hoping he can give it to the departed. But as Takeshi receives the flower, it withers in his hands due to his aura of death. He sighs, takes out a pair of white gloves from his pocket, and prepares to leave with the little girl. It turns out the little girl is the one who passed away at the funeral. She questioned Takeshi because she saw her family so sad. But even after asking, she still won't understand fate. Takeshi looks at the grieving humans at the funeral, expressionless, and walks away. After experiencing scenes like this many times, his heart has long been numb. So, time passes, and Takeshi receives another task in the afterlife. The little dog faithfully follows behind him. For some reason, whenever Takeshi comes to the mortal world, the sky always rains lightly, which makes him feel a bit melancholic. Today, his target is an office lady named Yuki, just an ordinary girl. She currently works as a customer service representative in a company, dealing with numerous calls every day to handle customer inquiries. Recently, a customer has been harassing her every day, which bothers Yuki a lot. However, she dares not hang up the phone because it's her job. If she gets complained about for hanging up, she'll lose her job. So, she can only grit her teeth and endure it. But the long-term suppression has filled Yuki's life with sadness and despair. She often thinks that maybe she shouldn't live anymore. There are 2 scars on her wrist from previous attempts, and there might soon be a third. Takeshi hasn't approached Yuki yet. He has 7 days to observe her. He wants to take this time to listen to the music of the mortal world, or who knows how long it will be until he can come again. He waits for Yuki to leave work before approaching her. Of course, Takeshi doesn't reveal himself as the Grim Reaper. He pretends to be a lost person asking for directions. But Yuki is very guarded and doesn't want to engage with him. When Takeshi accidentally touches Yuki while trying to stop her from leaving, it instantly drains her life force. It's a misunderstanding, and Takeshi can only try to make amends. He removes the aura of death from Yuki's body and even helps clean her clothes. When Yuki wakes up, she thinks Takeshi is hitting on her, so she intentionally blocks him. But Takeshi doesn't understand what hitting on her means and instead asks if she wants to go swimming in the sea. This exaggerated gesture both annoys and amuses Yuki. Yuki realizes that Takeshi genuinely has no ill intentions, so she initiates a conversation with him. They hit it off immediately and decide to go to a restaurant together for dinner. During their chat, Yuki self-deprecatingly mentions that she's ugly and has no friends. Takeshi suddenly leans in, scrutinizes her for a moment, and then honestly says, "You're not ugly, just not pretty." Yuki feels a bit embarrassed because her comment about being ugly was meant to imply her plainness, not expecting Takeshi to take it so seriously. She doesn't know Takeshi is the Grim Reaper, but she senses that despite his straightforwardness, he's not a bad person, making him the perfect listener. So, Yuki vents to Takeshi about her frustrations at work, dealing with a creepy customer who harasses her every day. Takeshi curiously asks her why she doesn't refuse to take his calls. Yuki sighs and says it's her job. After dinner, it's time for them to part ways. Yuki feels a bit reluctant and really wants to see Takeshi again. To decide, she plans to flip a coin. Unfortunately, she runs into 2 robbers, and just as she's about to be harmed, Takeshi suddenly appears. These 2 unlucky robbers, despite facing the Grim Reaper, still try to resist but inevitably meet their end. As they prepare to part ways once more, Takeshi asks Yuki if she's ever thought about death. Yuki nods, admitting that she's been thinking about it every day recently. Takeshi seems to understand something and then reassuringly tells her not to worry, that she'll be free soon. The next day, Takeshi is still listening to music when he notices something unusual. Many of his colleagues are gathered around him, indicating that something big is happening nearby. One of them comes over, exaggeratingly claiming to be in love with a beautiful girl. Takeshi doesn't understand what love is. After hearing his colleague's story, he reflects on his own attitude towards Yuki. Could that be love? Yuki continues to receive calls from the creepy customer at work, which frustrates her. After finishing work, she directly asks Takeshi to have tea with her and then confides in him about her misfortunes. Her parents died in a plane crash when she was young, and after finally finding a boyfriend, he died in a car accident not long after. Her life is full of death, much like the perpetual rain, with no sign of clearing up. After they part ways, Takeshi stands outside her building with his dog. The dog asks if he's going to do it now. Takeshi shakes his head. The girl has experienced too much death, and fate has been unfair to her. So, Takeshi hesitates for a long time, ultimately deciding to wait until the last day. Soon, the final day arrives, and the rain continues unabated. Yuki brings the recording of her conversation with the creepy customer to her manager, but instead of support, she gets scolded. Heartbroken, she decides to leave work early. Surprisingly, the creepy customer shows up and drags her away. Terrified, Yuki tries to escape when he's not paying attention but finds herself cornered in a narrow alley. Just as the man is about to act, Takeshi arrives. However, the creepy customer suddenly confesses that he's a music producer and has been harassing Yuki because he thinks her voice is perfect for becoming a singer. Although his methods were inappropriate, he didn't have any ill intentions. Yuki is stunned and can't believe her sudden stroke of luck. Takeshi laughs when he sees this. Yuki's fate has changed, so he doesn't need to intervene anymore. Afterwards, the dog asks him if he's fallen in love with Yuki. Takeshi responds, "Can a Grim Reaper even love?"